It's Thursday, July 19th. We've just gone past Rift Rivals. We just gone past week 3 of the LPL, and we're now moving into week 4. I'm Barento Raz Muhammad, and I'm with Clement Shu for this episode 3 of the LPL. Last podcast left. Clement, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. Just came back from Xi'an. Got to watch some games with WE. Unfortunately, they didn't win, though, but we did get to see that fancy stadium.
Hey, wait a minute. They took a game, though. They took a game. Remember that game 1? That was pretty nice.
Yeah, that was nice. But let me tell you something, okay?
All right.
Even though the drums in their stadium are great, even though the fans are great, I honestly heard more IG chants in that arena by this point.
Cut the tape. Wait a second. But that's what happens, man. Sometimes you get into a Chongqing arena. Chongqing, actually, that one's an exception because I feel like even the EDD audience ain't going to drown out the Snake fans. But if you go in OMG, you'll see more of the opposing teams like RNGs, EDGs. They just have too powerful of a fan base. I'm surprised you're hearing louder IG chants because WE has some slick audience. They have a lot of people riding them since their high histories.
Yeah, they definitely had a lot of hardcore fans, but when you haven't won a series in your own home arena yet, man, that really does weigh on the crowd.
That feels bad. That feels bad. I know LGD's got them pains from in Hangzhou. They've been winning a little bit, but let's direct our attention because I talked about how Rift Rivals is come and gone. The honeymoon period is starting to teeter off of teams, is getting back into the groove of things and the LPL, LCKs and all that. But our focus is on the LPL. Ain't nothing to look at it. We ain't gonna look at past that. And there have been teams that have been left behind. Teams throughout the 13-day period have just been scrimming. They gotta be. They have to be practicing because the next road is going to be towards playoffs, and cross-conference has officially started. So I'm going to direct my attention to a team that has been 5-1 with the rest of the 4 teams, the 4 representatives of Rift Rivals. I'm talking about JDG.
Oh man, this has to be my favorite team to watch in the LPL. They're absolutely buck wild crazy. They will take any fight you give them, and they're all mechanically good players.
But what's changed? Because wasn't that the identity of this team last split, and they only just got into playoffs having some rough troughs? How are they now a 5-1 team?
So I would put it this way. I think number one is that they didn't change that much. Not really.
That's true.
I actually don't think like their weaknesses are still there. Their macro play is still kind of suspect, and their strengths are still there. They're really good individual players. They have great team fights and stuff. But I think the drafting overall has been better. Like they actually have better compositions where you can see what they're aiming for. They had good answers to the gold funneling compositions. And, I think a big part of it was also just getting Clid back into form. Because Clid, he had a couple of missteps in spring, but now he's back. He's been grinding that solo queue ladder, really high ranked. And they just set their first step right, that first blood rate right, that 71% sweet spot right.
Yeah, they're hitting it a lot.
Good to go.
It's funny because one thing that you talked about is talent for the team. You're talking about Clid, Yagao, Loken now. I agree with you that the talent has always been there, has always been strong. The consistent roster has been coming through. One change that I would like to, poke your mind on is actually it's the most subtle one. The one the audience, the fans don't get to see very much. Coach Home, Worlds coach of WE when they went to the semifinals, now on that roster. And you said that they have been a team that's found proper responses to the funnel strategy. I feel like they're a team that has actually performed very well with the funnel strategy themselves.
Yeah.
So they're a team that I feel has really gotten better when it comes to the macro strategy. There's still, there's some weak points to the team macro-wise. A lot of it comes down to they're very one-track minded. You're never gonna push Clid. You're never gonna push him along and being a respectful player. He's gonna go for his plays, and it just comes down to whether it's the right one or the wrong one. So, what do you feel about the coaching that has really come in through? Because remember, UDJ, the former coach, moved on towards LGD, while it seems like Home is the mainstay coach for this team.
Right.
Of course, you already talked about the drafting. Anything else do you see?
All right, so the drafting really is the big one, and it's about how they can actually form better compositions. And, UDJ is my homeboy.
Yeah. That's true.
I know him from the LMS. He's been in my house. He's carried me through solo queue. He's a great guy, great player, but I had a lot of problems with his draft coming to playoffs, especially against a series versus BLG, where they basically went, let's throw a Hail Mary.
They went rogue, you're right.
Yeah. Let's just pick whatever good champion we're on, and it didn't work out. And This split, it looks really, really different. We're seeing them stick Zoom more onto tanks. They just want that extra room for Loken to really shine. They have a lot more faith in Loken as a late game AD carry. And I just think like they found their identity as this kind of scrappy team fighting composition that does take you on front to back. And I like that idea. I like that they're setting up for a clear-cut team fight win, where it really wasn't that way in Spring Split. In Spring Split, you would see some poke compositions with the Zoe. You would see some pick with the Blitzcrank or something. But I think this split around, you just look at their comps, and their comps look better.
Yeah, in fact, remember near the end of spring when it finally got to that final set versus them and Suning Gaming to find out which team actually goes into the playoffs. JDG won even though everyone thought that Suning Gaming were the better team.
They just copied the enemy composition straight up. Like mid-series, they just took the enemy comp, and it's just night and day what they're doing right now.
Do you think that's changed now, though? Because obviously JDG are a better team in terms of the standing. If you're just looking at the standing itself, they're right up there with Invictus Gaming and RNG, and well above Suning Gaming at their current pace. Do you think right now, if they find themselves in the 4th place spot, that being said, it's a tough discussion because the 4th place spot seems guaranteed right now for Suning Gaming and JDG. But would you say that JDG right now are a better team than Suning Gaming?
Ooh, okay, this is a tough one, but I would say yes. I think they have a more consistent early game overall. I like the duo between Yagao and Hacker a little bit more between Angel and Angel and Hacker compared to Clid and Yagao.
Yes.
I would still take Clid and Yagao. You know, the joke here in China is that they move around so well with their jungle, their top lane, and their mid laner because all 3 of them are actually the same person. They look exactly the same. They're the Dumpling brothers. So so there's great communication, great synergy between these 3. And for me right now, I think Angel, you know, had a great game, but he's still an unknown for me. So I'm gonna put my faith in Yagao and Clid. And I'm betting that if these two teams face up against each other, I think the better early game is still gonna dictate.
There we go.
Yeah.
I like that answer. And before we move on towards the other team that was left behind, Suning Gaming, I want to talk one question with you with JDG. So, JDG, if push comes to shove, they find themselves in the playoffs run, maybe even getting a positive bye. Remember, they beat RNG in the first round of the round robin. So it's very possible. Yeah, it's quite possible they might even have a better seed than RNG just because now RNG doesn't even have Uzi in the roster. It's a possibility. But let me ask you this question. You get into the best of 5s. Do you think JDG will be able to beat the top 4 of the Rift Rivals representatives? And I'm talking EDG, Rogue Warriors, IG, RNG.
All right, so here's my take on it. I think the big one is, can they climb over EDG? IG, I think no. I think they're too hectic. They're too similar in terms of their strengths to Invictus Gaming to actually climb over that, because Invictus Gaming just hold you down in laning phase.
Yep.
And JD actually, you know, if they start on a bad foot, they actually don't climb back on the horse again. Like this is something we've seen from them. It's been a consistent problem. You know, sometimes they do come back like this week, but overall I think they're too similar to Invictus Gaming to overtake them. I think they have a very good shot against Rogue Warriors. I think Flawless has been having a very inconsistent split. I think Zoom will actually has a lot more pressure over Mouse in that case. And I actually think Doinby has the better... Doinby won't necessarily have the champion pool to go up against Yagao, because Yagao is a guy that plays everything, and Doinby right now is actually just a fighter one trick.
Hey, you can't count this man out because he's bringing out new picks, though.
It's true. It's true. But... I've got to see it to believe it.
Okay, that's true.
I think he's gone very far down the rabbit hole. So I think Rogue Warriors they actually beat in their current state. EDG is a super interesting one to me, because EDG has always been the cerebral team of the LPL, and you know, sometimes they fall to these teams that don't play with the same calculations, but are just like better in lane.
Yeah, a little bit faster pace that could cut them when they're going into tempo, because EDG is very reliant on that tempo.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a big test for me, because if EDG can outsmart JD Gaming, but JD Gaming still out-execute and beat them anyway, then I think JD Gaming have a very, very long way to climb. Like they actually have a lot of leeway to go to the top.
And who do you think is going to be the breakout star for JDG right quick? Because I know there's a discussion between me and Frost between Yagao and Loken. The team plays around team fighting very similar to Rogue Warriors, and that just means naturally it's going to be SMLZ and Loken. But I know the play usually starts with Yagao and Klid.
That's
So I know
an
what.
easy one, man.
Oh, okay, you give it to me.
Yagao 100%. Your boy Yagao in the house, man.
All right, get out of here.
Have you seen the guy play? Have you seen the guy play? Like, he's just so good. And it's about rookies and team fights, because you rarely see rookies play team fights well. And it's about understanding, controlling the zoning. And he does that so well on Galio. Just watch how he plays the frontline team fight.
And yeah, so I'll take that. The man has been slick. The man's been slick. So let's move on to the next team that, has been building up. A bit of a rocky montage. Last split, just missing out on playoffs.
Oof. That was a tough one.
It was rough. Suning Gaming now not only losing out in playoff potential, now going into this split in summer, losing in their star in Night. A lot of people counted them out. In fact, few people still counting them out. So I'm going to ask you this question. Now bringing on Angel, untested player. I mean, he's been playing in LDL. Do you think Suning Gaming will make it to playoffs?
And my answer is yes. Because currently I don't believe in BLG. And if you look at that Eastern Conference, if BLG is not going to challenge them, I don't think anyone else will. So I think Suning are actually sitting pretty comfortable at their own spot. They have 3 teams behind them: Billy Gaming, LGD, and I believe it's Vici Gaming. So
yes,
it's really hard for me to see Suning falling behind these 3 teams. They just have a much higher capacity for their current talent on their roster. And for me, Xiao has just been outstanding this split so far. He's been probably I would say the best top laner so far, actually, looking down the list. Statistically, that's definitely number 1.
Yep.
I think he's had a lot more stellar games than the Shy, who's just came back. So I would rank him currently number 1.
See, that's the discussion, because I know that me and Frost have been talking about this in episode 1, funny enough, because when you get into the split, Xiao's been performing consistently, incredibly, and the discussion is he top 1? Because the Shy hasn't been playing consistently. Remember, he's had that injury since last split, now starting to play again. You really can't make a discussion for, or I guess a push for the Shy until he really starts to play a lot more games. I know the last set that he had versus WE, he had that one game. There we go. Look at this guy. Do you make your decisions based off the fact that this guy does or does not play Clyde?
No, but it was more about the teleports. The teleports were just weird. But, it's an Invictus gaming problem overall. But I think the biggest thing about Xiao is that he's always had that potential to be number 1, number 2. This is a guy that EDG tried to pick up as well. His problem was that he just did not back out at the proper times. Yep. And in Spring Split, we saw a lot of footage of him just going 1v5 and costing the entire late game. So he hasn't been doing that so far. And it's just propelled him to the top. I had him rank 4 on my top 10 list of top laners last time around, and now that he's just fixed his problems, he's such a comprehensive player.
Yeah. That's sick. I mean, I agree with you. I think currently, looking at where the team's current trajectory is, just even talking to the team, it comes down to the fact that they have faith in their new player Angel, of course being brought in from Tyloo in the LDL, a rookie. A lot of people were looking towards the rookie that they last brought in, Knight. He was a prodigy in a lot of ways. Always been hitting number 1 in Korean solo queue in peak times. Now bringing in Angel, obviously people are looking at this with the criticisms, the drums of not having Knight, and he's already had 2 series where he's started to perform well. A pentakill in his last series up against OMG. And even with the OMG victory that they had, 2-1, I would say the most impressive thing was the loss that they had versus Rogue Warriors, where they were able to take a game as well. So do you think, with the fact that if we're talking about Angel starting to perform, I'm not saying better than Knight, I don't think that's possible.
I agree.
But if he starts performing well enough, better than Fan, is a player that can hold himself on side lanes, do you think this is a team, when they goes into the e-commerce war, once again, can't take JD? Because remember, JD right now is playing super well, and this was a team that we were saying that was better than JD. Do you think JD's been out, or at least do you think that Suning Gaming's been outpaced by JD?
Yeah, currently I do think that's the case. I actually have my chips more stacked in JD Gaming's corner right here. But for me, the biggest question about Angel is, can he actually fulfill what Knight did for the team, and that was something very rare, and it's about playing the side lanes, which is something you don't see a lot of mid laners be comfortable in doing. Like, Knight was very good on Assassins, he was very good on Echo, and with Xiao he gave that team a 1-3-1 edge in terms of the later game and finishing off the game. That's actually how they beat Rogue Warriors the last time around, was that Knight split push. So unless they do show me that part, I'm going to be very doubtful, because if you look at the other way they clean the game out, which is through their team fighting, I'm actually not that sold on this team yet. I don't think they're as strong of a team fighting team compared to JD.
Okay, I can agree with that. I think this is a weird situation for Suning, because I agree that at the moment, JD just look like they have gotten things together. They've been sticking with the same lineup, not bringing in Xiaohan, not bringing in RD, and their two major players of Loken and Yagao have just been outstanding currently. Where Suning Gaming still need to figure things out. Remember, you said the side lane point for Knight. His major champions have been Corki, had been the Echo pick. He's always find himself, like, he's a superstar finding himself making like outplays in side lanes. So that's just something you're not going to get back. And unless if they change their identity quick and start being comfortable around team fighting, it feels like playing around Angel, while good, it's not going to give them a deep run into playoffs if they face these top 4 teams, including JDG.
I just want to give a short overview to SNG and Spring Split. So you're talking about Knight. This guy had the most solo kills of any mid laner, 16. And with that kind of a snowball, they actually had the best jungle control in the early game as well, even better than Invictus Gaming. So they had such a dominant start with Knight. And, you know, Angel's been doing well, but I think if you look at Hacker over this split, he just hasn't had the same impact that he did in Spring. And that's mainly just because of the duo change. And starting out on a wrong foot really makes this team look a lot less stable coming into the team fights.
Yeah, I mean, even just to hit that point home, there was a moment when Suning Gaming went up against OMG, and you immediately saw, like, Cool versus, or no, Icon. I just always think OMG and Cool. I don't know what's wrong with me. My mind's back in, like, 2016. But Icon goes up against Angel. Angel just goes in off of one, you know, Irelia W, so he gets a stun. He just jumps in without Hacker even in the area. The man is playing Nocturne, and all he's asking from his mid laner is for me to be at least in range of my Nocturne ulti. So while they still end up winning the skirmish, you could tell that it always comes down with Hacker of how well he meshes with his solo laners.
Yeah.
Right now, it seems like the only lane that he can really do that consistently with is the top lane of Xiao. They've probably been, I don't know, I don't think it's arguable the best 2v2 right now topside, just because Xiao has been performing so damn well, and because Hacker has just been really honing in on that lane. So that's interesting from that side, that I feel like Suning Gaming versus JD, it always, with just the 2 splits that we've had here, feels like it always comes down to it. It's the e-commerce war, so it feels like it's destined, but also it just feels like both of these teams have the same identity of young blood coming up in the league, incredibly talented, making strong acquisitions, either on the coaching side for JDG or player side for Suning Gaming. And it comes down to the final sets. I'm just waiting. I'm just ready and waiting for the last set to be both of these teams to find out who takes the spot. Because for whatever reason, throw all that mindset, mentality, all of this, somehow BLG makes a run. I'm just making that out there. I'm just saying.
It's not happening. It's not happening.
They closed the gap just a little bit. At least BLG just won 1 set and Suning Gaming lost. I'm just throwing out stupid shit at you, all right? I'm just throwing out the thought experiments.
I'm really happy that Suning's going to come into playoffs, because, you know, they were actually the best early game team in Spring Split, and that 15-minute spike from them, that's absolutely beautiful to watch. So they're the JD that actually has a more coherent game plan. So that's the really interesting thing about them. They have a lot of room to grow, and I think they're a bit more cool-headed. They like to trade objectives sometimes. Not like JD. JD's just kill people all the time. So it's going to be a clash of style, but it's going to be a very high-caliber clash of style.
Okay, there we have it. I want to move on a little bit now, because both of those teams, that's going to be fun to track going forward in the upcoming weeks. Now, of course, remember, Suning Gaming, I already mentioned, victory over OMG, loss over Rogue Warriors. JDG has a 2-1 victory versus both WE and FPX since we last saw them coming out of Rift Rivals. Let's move on to the next team. You got to give some love to the Western Conference. I know we like to take a dump on them a few times. Western Conference not having a solid time. Every single time we talk about the stats between East versus West, West tends to suffer. We realize that's just the case. Now, I want to talk about one team that got booted out. No contention towards Rift Rivals. Snake Esports. Coming into this split, Snake was the funneling team.
Yep.
They were a team that literally, sure, we throw away the first set where they lost to OMG and didn't start with their funneling. In fact, started with a Sejuani. Then the next split, and since that point forward, has had Hudye, Maestro, coming in as a double support, with SOFM and jungle playing all hosts of bruisers, range carries, and having a good time. Now, we've been hitting that narrative for a little bit. I want to hit you up with an update, Clement.
Okay.
They're putting in their 80 carry now. They're putting in light.
I know. And I'm loving it.
You're liking it? Okay, tell
Yeah.
me, what is the difference between that, these two compositions, and which one do you like prefer? I mean, you already gave me a sneak peek. You already said that you like light. Why?
Yeah. All right, so the big reason that I like them going on an 80 carry is that I feel like less is riding onto SOFM's shoulders. Now, SOFM, he's a great player. He's the inventor, the mad scientist, but a lot of the times the way he plays is not like a solo carry of the team. And when they run the gold funneling, he's basically the only carry a lot of times when they're running this composition. Just to put a reminder, they put double supports in their game, and they're typically playing double supports in the bot lane as well, just to get the lane shoved. So he's playing as the only carry, but a lot of the times he's going in 1v5 in the front, trying to close out the games by himself, and you can do that as a jungler. If you're a jungler and you have two carries on your side, that's the play style you want to go with. But if you're the sole carry on the team, you really don't want to do that. Yeah. And the good thing about having light on the team in playing a normal composition is that they have Flandre in the top lane being a carry as well. His Jax has been good. His Vladimir has been good. He had the highest kills for a top laner in the spring split. So when you open up the entire board and they have 4 carries playing now, SOFM playing, Guoguo playing, Light playing, and then Flandre playing as well, I think it's much more diverse. I think they have a better team fight identity, and it's much harder to pin them down.
Yeah, and to remind the audience, Snake coming out of Rift Rivals were 3-3 in the standings, so they've been splitting games. Of course, one of those sets were up against OMG where they weren't going for the gold funneling strategy. Now are sitting at 5-3 since implementing Light back into their roster.
Yep.
I'm going to be honest with you, Clement. I mean, you already heard it. I was pretty disappointed with the gold funneling strategy. It was fun to watch. It was real fun to see. Global audience will be looking towards North America and Korea and being saying, yeah, you know, funnel it towards an 80 carry. Towards a Xayah, towards a Lucian sometimes, towards a Kaisa. That sounds pretty damn good to me. But he's been doing it with bruisers. He's been throwing in Jace.
You don't like
Rengar? What the hell is that? So now I understand that there are gold funneling compositions to our mages like Talia, so you can put in the experience and gold in that and speed up a game, and it's supposed to give you a stronger mid game. But we know what Snake does with their mid-game compositions, and we know what SOFM does when he has a lead and he's rearing to go.
Yeah.
A lot of the times, and they're finding losses here, inconsistent ones, especially when they lost against TOP, when they where SOFM was a little bit too aggressive, even dying in lane solo when they were trying to walk up to a Zoe.
Yeah,
there were
I remember that.
Some weird moments with this team and putting all the eggs into the SOFM basket when he wasn't scaling. He was actually just going for these mid-game comps. I wasn't too comfortable with. So how would you feel about that?
Yeah, so the big difference about playing with the AD carry scaling and the bruiser scaling is you actually have a much shorter window on the bruiser. He falls off a lot harder, especially if you're talking about picks like the Jace and the Rengar. They're mainly for picks rather than actually just like farming up and then getting that extra item like gold funneling with the Xayah works. So if SOFM ever missteps, if he gets killed early game, the gold funneling actually collapses. And if you look at their stats when they actually did run the gold funneling, they did not even have a gold lead.
Yeah.
Which is the funny thing. They actually didn't run a gold lead over the opposing mid laner. What actually happened in those games was that they would find some picks somewhere on the map in the mid game, especially against the WE set. That's exactly what happened. They caught out Condi twice, and then they had a massive gold lead. So a lot of times when you're watching those gold funneling games, it doesn't even feel like the concept was what worked. It felt like it was the Snake execution that carried them over the line.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm going to give them a bit of leeway because they go on a weird twist to their gold funneling compositions. There were a few times where they were running Aurelia with SOFM with a Nautilus running around. So they were just literally looking for picks. There'd be times where like, all right, sure, I'm getting this mid lane wave, but once I'm pushing, I'm actually hunting. Yeah. So there are times where that happens, but you're right. It just feels like this team, when they had that gold funneling composition in mind, were not going for what was ideal, what was intended with the gold funneling from Korea. They were just having their own twist of trying to get SOFM to carry.
Yeah. So I don't think we see it right now because once everyone is running the smite mids and you're already behind before the smite mids, like it's really hard to come back. I will say that gold funneling is not going to go away, and it's not going to go away for Snake. We saw it against BLG. And if you're running a composition that's really slow in some of the side lanes, really slow in the mid and jungle, then gold funneling is still a great answer to that. So Snake is going to keep that in their playbook.
There we go. There we go. I mean, there's some – it's funny because there's some dev talk about trying to kill gold funneling by having it so the person who comes in with a machete or whatever, just your early jungle item, that if you have a gold lead as that jungler, then you get reduced gold income coming in from the actual minion wave coming through. And so people have been looking at it as like, that's kind of weird. I mean, that's a weird way to handle it. And I still feel like even with that being said, it's not going to be a massive nerf to gold funneling strategies because you usually finish up your jungling item at like around 8 minutes, and that's when you get the full gold and all that nonsense back. So they can still run it. Like, ain't nothing stopping them. What I feel like has been really good with Snake, or at least bringing back Light, is just the flexibility. Like, holy moly! Now you can run mages in the bottom lane again, and now you can actually run standard junglers. And as you mentioned, Flandre can carry because he was a superstar on the top side of the map, and now he can go up against Jinnu and not just be a tank bot because that's just what the composition requires out of him. So with Flandre coming back into form, what do you see from this team? What's the style that you think they will start to move towards? Because they've always been a top side centric team when they've like before going into the gold funneling strategy. Do you think they're going to go right back in towards Flandre, get him to carry? He's been playing a lot of Jax. Do you think that is what they will do, and do you think it's a viable strategy?
I definitely think it is. Like, the problem with Snake esports has never been their top side. It's actually been their bot side. And Light is the one stepping in, and we look at him and we say, okay, maybe Snake is going to lose a lot less of those first towers. They were the #1 team in the Western Conference, but they actually had one of the lowest first tower rates of the entire league.
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah, and that was because their bot side was incredibly weak. You know, Crystal is a very iconic player. They call him the Mr. Glasses in China because he always wears those gilded glasses.
Yeah.
But his laning phase was not something that Snake wanted to see. And with Light coming in, he's had good showing so far. At least he can hold his own. And in this meta where you're running a lot of mages, it's actually very difficult to have your bot lane fall that far behind. So I think Snake have basically been patched up just by the meta itself. So they just go back to what they did in spring, and I think they're really good.
I'm going to ask you this question once again. I already asked you that with JDG. I'm going to ask you with Snake because this has always been a question we've asked with Snake since they come into the league. Yeah. How far do you think they actually go? Because you already mentioned the fact that they've moved away from Crystal. That, remember, there was that 1 week with Crystal where he had a chance to go up against SMLZ, iBoy, get challenged in the bottom side of the map, also Uzi, and he got smashed every single time.
Yep.
Now you bring in Light. That could be the addition, along with the fact that he can actually just play Swain in the bottom side of the map. Do you think that all of the major weakness, the core weakness, the Achilles heel of Snake has been healed up to the point where they can challenge teams in playoffs? They get into playoffs, and I'm saying ideally, Snake is now a cleaner team.
Yeah.
If they are a cleaner team and they're the inclinations of like, you know, SOFM randomly dying isn't there anymore, do you think that they can challenge which team of the Rift Rivals representatives do you think they can get at?
I think they can take down Rogue Warriors.
Oh, you ain't looking too good about Rogue Warriors.
What? No, I'm not looking too good about Rogue Warriors.
Okay.
I'll be honest. I don't think they're... I don't have a lot of faith in them currently, but I actually think that Snake esports, now their bot lane is fine. They probably will go all the way up against Rogue Warriors, and that's a matchup I'm looking at because then again, you have Flandre versus Mouse in the top lane, and that matchup has been scary for Mouse.
Yes.
That's not been a fun place for him. And SOFM versus Flawless, again, that historically has went into SOFM's favor quite heavily as well. So that would be the team that I think they have a good chance of upsetting.
Okay, there we have it. I mean, that's going to be real fun to watch. In fact, last time we saw SOFM, or at least Snake as a team, when they were in playoffs, the overarching narrative from the team, and I'm not sure about the audience themselves, is that Snake actually could have gone further had they just ran a regular composition in the playoffs.
Yeah, you have to remember that they went to Game 4 against RNG, and Game 4 I casted that, so I was looking at the game and was like, oh my god, it's gonna go to Game 5 and Snake are gonna win. That series, their bot lane was down. I think 2 games they were down 65 plus CS at 15 minutes.
Yes.
Versus Uzi. So if you take that away, you make that small correction in history, they could have gone over RNG. That's a definite possibility.
What's fun about that too is that not only did the bottom lane get smashed, but also Snake as a team had to move away from the Trundle strategies.
Yeah.
Because SOFM is not good on these disengaged champions like Trundle that really can't force his style. So now he's in a meta in which he can actually just play whatever the hell he wants. So Snake has that opportunity to go up against Rogue Warriors. That's fun. And this is all if they can get things together and if they can stop making these weird mistakes during the regular season. So that's going to be fun to see from Snake's side. And before we move towards the Rift Rivals representatives themselves, which team do you want to talk about, Clement? Which team that didn't go to Rift Rivals that you actually be like, nah, actually I want to talk about this team. They can go far, whether it be the teams that are not in playoff contention that can make playoff contention, or teams that are pretty much in playoff contention and you expect them to be there, but you're also saying that they will go to a third place match, if not a finals. I know this is looking way too deep into the future, but who are you putting your chips in for?
This is going to be an interesting one, but I actually think that TOP is going to be in playoffs.
Oh my God.
I'm not kidding. TOP currently sitting 8 wins, 11 losses. They're over WE. They're over the bottom of the barrel on the Western Conference, and they're looking at a real shot. 3-5, but they're looking good.
Yeah. For everybody out there, 3-5. They're currently above OMG, who's also right now 3-6 because they played an extra series. Fun Plus Phoenix 2-6, so it's very close down there. And that's not even mentioning WE that you would expect to maybe get things together at some point at this part of the season. Now it's saying that they're going to make it to 4th place. It feels like a difficult call right now for WE. But for TOP, you're saying that with all the competition that's on the bottom side of the Western Conference, you think they'll make it to 4th place?
Yeah, I actually think they will. So that's going to be my dark horse. It's kind of a difficult bet because we don't know what's going on with Marin. They actually haven't been playing him so far, which is the interesting thing. He could still come back. But XX has been looking good. Goon has been looking good. And their bot lane can play a lot of diverse styles. The big thing for me is that Chocho is one of those marksmen that transition to mages quite well. And there's not a lot of them around that actually manage to do that.
Yeah. It's fun, actually, with TOP. For people out there that don't remember, who don't know this team, because you would have to watch the LPL fairly consistently to get this team. They're not going to be, like, they haven't made it to an international. They're fairly new in the sense that when they joined the league as Dan Gaming, they had a pretty large start, taking down EDG. They were actually at 1st place in their conference. This is going history time. But then once cross-conference started, they were a team that went on an 18-series losing streak that they should have been easy going into playoffs. But then from that series, and of course for people out there, yes, 18 series means that they continued to lose when they got into the next split as well, when they rebranded to TOP as well. This is the same team, even bringing in Lies who was in there. So for the most part, this is all the same people. The only exception you can have is the fact that they are now putting in XX instead of Karin. XX was actually a part of the team for quite a bit of it. So now they've had their start. Coming in, and XX has been the most improved jungler from that split to this one. You're saying that this team's looking good. Who is the player that you're looking towards on TOP, and you think that he's gonna lead them to the playoffs?
Ooh, talk about leadership. I actually do think it comes from the jungler, just like he said, XX. If you look at the player cams this split around, like he's just been so determined to carry his team forward. You know, he was actually benched in spring for attitude problems, but I got to cut him some slack. Like, he was just laughing in a losing game.
That's the thing.
That doesn't count.
Holy moly, this team is so strict because remember, at this time, TOP were losing so often.
Yeah.
And just because they were getting smashed in a particular game, I actually don't remember who they were going up against, but he was laughing.
It was done.
Yeah, it was done. It was a done deal game. He was caught on it, and the organization just benched him saying that, hey, you know what? you have to have a winner's mindset. And people will look at that and be like, that's crazy. But that's the attitude that this organization has for a team to step up, to push them to, I would say, greatness, but it seems like this team has really been finding a stride coming back into this one. A major upgrade would say the fact that they have BSYY back into the coaching position. There was a time in which they lost him to FPX, so now he's back on towards the team. The strategy looks fair. They seem a lot more co-synced around XX as his jungler. Do you ever see Karn coming back? Because I feel like, for me, there's no reason to bring him back. XX too fire right now.
Yeah, no, there's no reason. If you look at the entire strategy, their drafting revolves around XX. They're going in and they're banning away a lot of strong junglers, and they're making sure he gets Camille or Graves on first rotation, and they just smash the jungle side. If you look at their level 1s, they actually have some of the best level 1 setups. They always do the 4-man invade, and one like defends the other side as well. So there's a lot of good strategy going in, and sure, you could kind of nitpick this team as not having enough talent to make a run, but you have to remember they're playing in the Western Conference, and they got a couple of teams that do have good talent, but just don't have any cohesion behind them. So there's a very good chance that, a team with mediocre talent, but with a good game plan and a good sense of direction, will pop out and go all the way.
And they're slowly starting to get themselves some talent. It's funny, but like a lot of the people out there have been looking towards, hey, TOP, acquire some talent. I know they did that with Marin. It's funny that they're now feeling so confident that they don't have to play him, that they're just playing in their Chinese top laner now in Lies, just for the communication aspect in it. What do you think about that acquisition first before I actually move into... Because my take is that I think XX has turned into a bit of a star himself. I'm not saying that he's the best jungler right now, but with how he's consistently performing, he's a talent that they can play around and just be confident in that he can execute.
All right, now this is my controversial theory.
Oh, give it to me.
All right, but I think this team should be going after Knight.
Oh, here we go.
I think this is the team to do it.
Yep.
Because if you look at it, we always say that they're just one good carry away from being like a top team, and Knight plus XX is a scary thought. Now, our only confirmation is that he's not going to RNG.
That's true.
But he's definitely going to one of these teams, and if you look at the potential, I think it's either Suning Gaming or TOP. I think those are the highest contenders.
It's fun. I mean, for me, I remember when a big question was, Young Miracles technically blew up at the time, and we were just looking towards where Knight was going. And for me, I was like, you know what? He's going on Suning, because Suning was the team that had the deepest pockets, it would seem. They were looking for young pockets, it would seem. And they were currently running with Dien and Fen, and they needed an upgrade there.
Yeah.
So it seemed like it made the most sense for that team to be pushing, at the very least, to acquire Knight. And I agree with you. Right now, I feel like for TOP, although Gung is playing better, in terms of better than last split, it's not at a bar in which the LPL currently is challenging for him. The LPL mid laners are ridiculous. Even on the worst of teams, even on like Team WE, you have what would be the MVP of CA. Incredible player there. Fun plus Phoenix. Cool. OMG. I'm literally just going through each and every team.
I know. You have to go all the way down to Vici, where you're like, okay, maybe the mid laner isn't that good.
And they just got Coco. Yeah. They just got that man.
I know.
They plucked him out of the TCL in Turkey. So, and you would have to say, if I'm looking at all of these, it feels like Gung and Korn are legitimately the weakest mid laners in the LPL. Legitimately, you look at one of these teams and you can't tell me right now that...
All right, this is going to be another controversy.
Okay,
but
give it to me.
I would actually take Goon over Icon.
Oh my God! Wait a minute, Clement. You can't just come into my podcast.
You can tell Goon what to do. You can play a wave clear champion.
All right,
Pick something rather than an assassin. You can tell him what to do.
You're trying to say that for the betterment of OMG, you have to play like
one-on-one. Icon smashes him.
Yeah, okay.
No question.
There we go.
No question.
I can
for
agree
the
with
team,
that.
I would actually go with Goon.
Major issue with OMG is that their major player is very much, I got to play this style. I got to play assassins. I have to play, and he slowly started to pick up Galio. When we were just saying, please pick up this broken champion so you can win some team fights because your team fights ain't looking good. So that's not even that controversial, man. If you told me that Icon would lose to Goong, I would have tore you up right here.
No way.
It would have been murder on this podcast. But yeah, I think that's a fair point. I think right now OMG's in a position where they do need to pick up a challenge to Icon. Not because Icon is a bad player. I think individually he's still incredibly talented. is a slick player, but they need direction on that team. And I feel like the current direction they have is a trap.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so.
Well, the Cali rework is coming, so.
Oh my God. Maybe they just got to buckle down and wait for it. But yeah, just to roll us back into a TOP, that's a good point. I'm waiting for this. I don't know what the contract issue is right now, live for Knight. No one does. But if Knight finds a team, it needs to be, if it's TOP, and if it's, okay, I'm going to give you a good question.
All right.
If it's TOP, and if it's week 7 that they get him, do you think this team will make a good enough run? And I mean, I always ask you with all these teams.
What does good enough mean?
Good enough.
You have to define it.
Okay, I'm going to tell you good enough, because you're going to have to challenge me now if you think it's better than me. Because I'm saying right now, they won't beat RNG and IG. You'll probably agree
with that.
There we go. JD is looking fairly damn good. Now, you're saying TOP with Knight going up against JDG and possibly Sinning. Which team do they beat?
Oh, damn. That's a hard one. I don't think they beat either.
Oh!
I think they make playoffs.
Yeah.
I don't think they beat either.
Yeah, Western Conference curse. Once again, you got to prove yourselves, West Coast. It's like the East Coast. I know a lot of people right now, not a lot of people watch NBA. People just focus on league. It makes sense. But if you're looking at conferences, and remember we're franchised, much like a lot of these sports, in the NBA, the Eastern Conference ain't looking too good.
Yeah.
And so if you're looking at this league right now, the Western Conference ain't looking too good. You got EDG that's looking really strong, and they can consistently make the top. But the challenge within that conference, you look at Fun Plus, WE that's looking rather bad, flaccid, one would say.
Yeah.
And it's just like the Eastern Conference that's popping off individually in their own league. So there's competition there. I can agree with you that TOP, they need to find growth within themselves, because currently they can make playoffs, but the real challenge is up ahead.
They're probably going to go 0-7 versus the Eastern Conference.
Holy moly.
They could still make playoffs that way. That's how crazy these two leagues are. And I'm just going to throw it out there, but in Spring Split, there's 3 teams in the Eastern Conference that won 21-0 against the West, and the overall win rate was 30 series wins to 19 versus the West.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really unbalanced out there.
You know what? I'm going to move on to the next one.
All right, let's go.
Because we've gone past all these teams that have been left behind. And you know what? I'm not even going to be touching IG and RNG. I feel like ING and RNG, we can hit on that in the future episode. They're a team that's looking unchallenged right now in the regular season. Do you have a piece to say about that team, those two teams? Do you feel like there's any question about those two teams in the regular season going to playoffs? Yes, IG, RNG.
Oh, I have a lot of problems with IG.
IG?
Yeah.
Oh my God, now I got to move things aside? Okay, you know what? I will let you talk about IG.
All right.
I'm going to give it to you.
All right,
because I'm about to go into these 4 teams that did represent Rift Rivals and moving back in. Talk about IG for me.
IG did represent Rift Rivals.
Exactly.
I don't think they were a good macro sense team right now. Their only answer to what enemy teams are doing and out team fighting, having better late games than them, their only answer is to go even harder in the early game. Like we just saw in the WE series, where if someone stalled them out, they said, okay, enough of this kid stuff. We're going LeBlanc Lee Sin. Two players that have the last name with Lee. Let's bring them all in, and let's just smash the early game even harder. They're not even trying to fix their problems. They're acknowledging they're there, but they're trying to dodge away from their problems rather than improve on them. And it's a tough one. It's a really tough one, because I think if IG ever run into a meta that can stall, is slow, and goes to late game team fights, there's a lot of problems for them down the line.
One of the biggest problems people look towards is Jackie Love, because in the regular season he's been strong, but when it gets to these pressure situations, remember what happened in the RNG series? He crumpled versus what was a very strong Uzi, obviously. So do you think that he will be able to, because that's a problem that takes experience. He needs to get out in the field to be able to get that, more confidence underneath him. Do you think this is enough time? That going into this playoff, and if he goes up against Eyeboy, who seems to be confident no matter what when he went to Worlds, to go up against Uzi, who will come back for playoffs. I mean, that's just going to be a given. They're not going to allow RNG to get into playoffs and then not play their star player. Do you think he does that again? Because that's always a tough one. That's asking, looking into the future. Yeah. But it's just a time issue, because that player right now, do you think he's performing well enough?
No. And I think he's just a Draven player to the core. Just try to think of a scenario where you've seen Jackie Love finish a team fight, like actually do the cleanup work. and you'll never have that image. If you look at all of his highlights, the quintessential Jackie Love play is that he tanks the front line, but somehow still manages to kill the enemy backline. That's how you play as a Draven player. It's kind of a brain dead style. It's a very all-in style, but it works great on Invictus Gaming because they're running triple carries most of the time.
Yep.
And if there's ever a meta that slows down and says you can only play 2 carries, or maybe Conqueror's nerfed to hell, or playing a bruiser is just non-viable somewhere, then I don't necessarily think Jackie Love is going to stand up to iBoy, SML0 Uzi. I think he's on the pedestal. I think he has the mechanics, especially the laning phase. But if you talk about the team fight style, no way. Like, they're calling him Catch Q Love right now, which is basically he just tanks everything in the front, and it works for him. It works for IG. It might not work in other metas.
There we go. I mean, metas, of course, constantly changing, and it seems like team fights are a little bit more frequent. It's IG that always wants to, no matter the meta, they're a team that defines themselves with their players, the talent that they have. Now bringing back the Shy. You would expect the Shy to consistently be playing now. If he plays at his top 1 percentage, if he comes back, and he's already had that Kennen game, but if he comes back and he continues on playing carries, performing well within the laning phase, just the simple lane kingdom style, you're saying that this team right now isn't the type of team to beat an RNG? Because remember, that discussion was a heavy one in Spring Split. It was a heavy one in Spring Split. They went to a full 5-game series when they had Duke. But this is a situation. This is completely different times now. Do you think that's enough time, and do you think the Shy would be the difference?
Oh wow, this is the tough one, because I still think the Shy smashes top lane no matter if it's a tie, no matter if it's let me. Like, he's done it in the past. The last time the scoreboard was disgusting, it was on Fiora taking down the inhibitor himself. But I honestly feel like RNG at this point, they're at the degree of synergy and flexibility in overall matchup that they can dodge out on a lot of these lanes from collapsing. Because you see their draft right now. You don't know who's going into the top lane until the very last pick. That's just the style that they've adapted now. So I think they're going to have a lot better flexibility in terms of choosing the matchups themselves, and they could probably dodge out on what happened in Spring, where they were sending like just an Ornn up against a Fiora and being like, okay, I guess we lose his lane.
Yeah.
So I think that point has fundamentally changed, and it's changed because of the way RNG drafts now.
Okay, there we have it. I mean, let me ask you quickly to wrap up top 4 Rift Rivals teams now.
Okay.
So, because remember at the time, Rift Rivals, it was Rogue Warriors that took the number 3 seed, IG the number 4 seed.
Yep.
And then that was just based off the catastrophe that happened in playoffs. That IG was the team that was supposed to be first place or second place at the very least, destined for finals, ain't happening when they get smashed. So right now, and I'm not talking about looking into the future, I've done that quite heavily right now.
Okay.
So right now, who do you think is the top 4 team from those 4 representatives?
All right, so I would go RNG, EDG.
With Uzi or without Uzi?
Oh, man, that's a tough one.
Since, you know what? For right now, I'm going to say...
Even without Uzi.
Even without Uzi.
Even without Uzi.
Okay.
RNG number 1.
There we go.
EDG number 2. I think they're performing the best. Ray has had pretty good split. Haro especially stepped up, filled that starter position. And Scout's been... we typically talk about him as a coin flip, but he's been coming at heads most of these games.
Yeah, he's been consistent recently.
Yeah, so they're looking on fire. They patch up most of their weaknesses. I would say ADG second, and Rogue
Here we go.
Warriors and IG.
Yeah,
That's
you got to pick one. This is the real demon right now.
Because I come from a coaching perspective.
Here we go.
And a lot of times what I see RW and IG do is that they put themselves in bad situations. They take bad fights. They lose their lanes on Rogue Warriors side quite frequently, but then they out-execute.
That's the anti-coach right there. Ain't nobody happy. If you're Coach Steak or if you're Mappa, you're absolutely disgusted because with both of these teams, things don't go to plan.
Yeah. That's a really interesting thing when I talked with IG and talked about with Rogue Warriors coaches, because typically we have this hierarchy in the West where we talk about the play, the concept, and then the execution. So if you look at the outcome, even if the outcome's good, but the play, the concept was bad, we call that a bad play.
Yep.
But things are different here in China. Things are actually different. No, I'm dead serious, and this has been a shock for me coming over. The biggest culture shock is they always tell me, but you're thinking about things the wrong way. Execution is always part of the play.
Oh,
What are
there we
you
go.
talking about?
All the code in the plan, Clement.
Yeah,
You're not looking at the mind. No, go on.
there is no hierarchy between these two. Like sometimes if you out executed and the outcome was good, then that was a good play.
Oh my God,
And
I don't want to hear this.
I know, because we come from similar backgrounds.
Yep.
You probably don't agree with that.
I don't.
Exactly. I don't
What will
agree
they
with that.
learn, Clement? If you go into a scrim stat and you're like, you just executed your opponents in a situation where you shouldn't have because someone came in too late.
Yeah.
That's not what you want for playoffs, Clem.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. I'm like, I don't think that's the right lesson. But here they actually think that, well, if you out executed, there's a solid reason behind that, and that means you could probably replicate it again. So that was a good play still in the end.
Science.
I'm not kidding you. This is actually the mentality going into these things. I don't agree with it, but I'm telling you, this is what I'm getting from the teams.
Clement, this is what happens when you bottleneck yourself in a region with too many damn good players.
Yeah.
And so you just find yourself winning no matter what, and you're like, maybe this is okay. I try to argue with these people, and they just keep telling me, no, I won. Why are you haggling me with me?
Exactly.
Why are you hacking at me now?
So, these teams, they're probably going to beat the best EU and NA teams, but then they're going to fall to like a middle of the pack LCK team. Like this is what's gonna happen, and there's a very high chance of that happening. Actually,
You still haven't answered me. Third or fourth place, Clement.
All right. I'm saying, to me, they're kind of on the same level.
What?
That's what I'm getting at. They come from the same mentality.
Yeah.
But I would still go IG.
There we go.
I would still go IG.
I would agree with you. I mean, it always comes down to faith with Invictus Gaming right now because they're just starting to get things together. So for me, it would be RNG. I would agree with that no matter what. They just seem weird with their deep bench. Like the fact that they can put in Zatai no matter what and still be an incredible team that you cannot take down. Remember, there's beating down EDG recently. So I would get RNG, EDG. I think Haro has been a promising step forward. I remember when I had my jungle tier list, Haro wasn't even in the top 10.
Yeah.
He just wasn't working because he didn't have the confidence to play. So I think right now he's doing real well for himself. I'll take him second place, and I'm gonna put IG RNG. It's funny, IG Rogue Warriors. So I guess we did the same damn thing. No matter what, it feels like we're aligned here.
My problem with Rogue Warriors is they really have one trick currently. It's basically run at you bruisers.
Mm-hmm.
And with the way the patches are going and the way that they've been countered in the past, I don't think it's that hard to solve. I really don't.
For me, it's weird with Rogue Warriors because they're a team that wants to play towards the late game.
Yeah.
It just feels like that's the case. I mean, right now they have a mid-game twist with the bruisers that they've been playing and the mages in the bottom side of the map. But ideally, you want to be playing around doing BNS MLZ. Their early games have been consistently poor. I mean, even like reaching out to the spring split. And when it comes to the team fights themselves, getting opened up before coming into Rift Rivals, by the way, when they went up against EDG, and then when they went to Rift Rivals, a major weakness they had was the vision control. So even in the late game team fights that they want to play towards, they don't even do proper setup for. No. So Rogue Warriors are a team that is really, really hammered in with talent. Like have very strong, talented players in every position. I would even say Mouse is before. I'm never gonna call Mouse a top 10. Oh, actually, I'm not gonna call him a top 5 top laner. There'll be a time in which to do so, and I think right now he's performing to a point where it's debatable that you can put him into the top 5. I think right now his Rumble play in Rift Rivals and his consistent TPs as a top laner has always been reliable. His high kill participation, so there's a call for that. But right now with Rogue Warriors, the struggle to beat Sin Gaming was real. And if they're going into a playoff setting against the Rift Rivals teams, maybe they can out-team fight in Invictus Gaming. But they don't have the setup for IG.
Yeah.
IG has the setup and they have the early game. That's been the core weakness of Rogue Warriors, and I feel like that's where they'll fall.
Yeah, what we've seen between these two teams is that IG consistently wins the early game, and when it comes to the mid-late game team fights, Rogue Warriors is actually not a very good scrappy team. Mm-hmm. They're actually a team that requires setup, but a lot of times they're not ahead enough to do the correct setup. If you look at their team fights, when it's like out of the blue against JD or Suning Gaming, they actually lose a lot of those sudden team fights. And I think that's the reason why Doinbees has been so good on Kled, because he can salvage those situations.
That's true.
Yeah, or he can be the one like going in and having some sort of a cohesion when they actually do it.
And all right, I feel like we're running down the time. We're almost at the end of the podcast.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask you a question that we might harken back to it. We might look back when we're in week 7 and say this is what Clement believes was going to happen for the cross-conference. So cross-conference obviously just started in week 4. Week 7 is the end point for that cross-conference. Will be the final week. Week 8 is when we go back into intra-conference play. So I know historically, teams like FPX and Game Talents have thrived in that setting, that they can pick wins up against the opposition. And I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to exclude the Eastern Conference.
Okay.
Who do you think from the West is going to thrive through cross-conference? Who do you think is going to win the most? And the most could even mean one game. The Western Conference ain't looking too good, man.
Yeah.
So just like, who do you think is going to be get the better out of it, excluding, let's say, Rogue Warriors and EDG, since they are the top 2 teams?
Yeah. So from my perspective, I think EDG, Rogue Warriors, Snake, they're just going to win a lot of games because they're good teams to begin with. But for me, WE is the team that I feel like is actually going to rise, because recently their play has been looking quite good. If you look at WE, they're a very interesting team. They have great early game stats, which is contradictory to what a lot of people actually believe.
That's true.
But where they failed is that big team fight. And Condi's been out of position a lot of times. The cohesion has been slightly off with them messing with the lineups. But now that they've settled down on 5-man, they got the 694 in the bottom lane and 957 in the top lane.
Remember, people, 694, formerly known as Celestial, going back to his name.
Yeah.
I guess the discussion was the fact that he couldn't pronounce his own name, Celestial. That was what I heard from Fish.
Yeah.
And so it's going back to comfort for him. But now we've got a situation where both of them are named numbers, Clement.
Yeah,
but
the
you're
whole
saying
team
that
is going to be 15 digits.
Oh, no, stop it. I don't want to call this team.
But this team,
Yes.
to me, actually looks fairly decent. And I think as long as they patch up some of their team fight issues, then they're actually good to go. Okay. So I actually see this team rising, and there might be a chance they overtake TOP.
There we go. You're saying it's a possibility. Remember that they are just 3 games away from doing 3 series, that is.
Yep.
And we have a long road to go. So for me, and I know we're alignment in this one, tell me if I'm wrong, that Team WE, it feels like they're so far off. 1-7 currently.
Yeah.
But they can still come back. You're talking about the consistent roster that they've been performing. We're going up against Invictus Gaming, even with a loss, that was a 1-game win. That it happened for a reason. This team is starting to find their groove right now. And while it seems like a slow pace coming back, they were a team that went to the semifinals of Worlds with a lot of these players in the rosters. In fact, this is the full roster.
Player.
Exactly. Celestial, or at least 694, is the only difference. And he's still playing the same picks. He's playing fairly well individually.
Yeah.
So this is a world performing team. The only issue is that they're not performing at a world's level. In fact, they're getting back to that point.
Yeah. But I think they're going to do it because Mystic has missed out on the first 5 sets of that run. So now he's coming back. He's putting up 36% of his team's damage. They have a core yet. The only thing I would say is holding them back, aside from the cohesion, has been the draft. They do not draft like an 8.13 team.
Yeah.
If you take the Swain away, they're going to take some weird-ass, slow-developing top lane and mid lane, and they're just going to wait it out until 35, and that just doesn't fly. Like, the same things that killed SKT are probably going to kill WE.
Oh, I don't want to hear it, Clement.
Yeah, so if they can patch up the coaching, if they have better drafts, I actually think WE right now will be one of those surprise teams coming out from the West.
There we go. Now, of course, for me, it's all that we have in terms of time. We're hitting that time limit that we've got for ourselves. We had a lot of topics and a lot of teams to look out for as we're going into the road to playoffs, the cross-conference just starting out this week. Now, he said it. Team WE is the team to watch. I mean, last split, we saw them just squeaking into the playoff spot, nudging FPX that had that surge. And it feels like TOP is going to do the exact same thing to them. So we're going to see if that's going to be the case. And if TOP can continue their proper position. I mean, remember what happened to TOP?
Night.
Oh, I know. If that happens, it's lights out.
Yeah.
All right, Clement, any final words for the people out there?
Just hang on watching to the LPL. You know, it might not happen in 2019, but my prediction is 2020. LPL definitely's got Worlds.
Oh, there we go. We've got ourselves the 2-year strategy. All right.
Yeah.
Something's going to happen, but within those 2 years, you better watch out. I'll say this year. Boom. All right. That's where I leave this podcast. Thank you. Good afternoon.
No problem.
Good evening and good night.